In this jungle guide, we're going to cover 5 strong OP and hidden builds that you really should be trying on strong junglers. That means you need to do more than accidentally lock an Exhaust Smite Nocturne to make me put it in the video. Obviously the best junglers are something we like to cover, but at the same time, how do we optimize them for good itemization, good playstyles, and basically accentuating different strengths that might suit your playstyle over the default playstyle. Essentially, OP builds for junglers that you really should be playing if you want to maximize your ability to win games. And yes, I know there's a status quo and a meta for their itemization, but that doesn't mean there aren't hidden OP combinations that can really unlock potential for you as a player. Don't forget that my tier list is available on Patreon in the weeks I don't make the video, and of course coaching VODs and coaching signups. But now let's begin with something that everyone's talking about, Rengar. Now we do have something very special in the works coming up with our Rengar guides and knowledge, working with Dopamine, Scrubnib, and the whole high elo challenger Rengar community. But for this one, I don't want to talk about those cool builds that you're gonna go. I'm gonna talk about some of the tank Rengar builds, such as this one. Now, as most of you know, I like to do Chem Tank into Titanic for my Volibear, and then I go full tank afterwards because of the conversion of HP into AD, which is great for something that likes to build full tank and has good AD ratio, so that you're still doing damage while having a huge amount of HP, and Titanic has 500 of said HPs. So why can't we do that with Rengar as well? And that's what's happening with this high elo challenger Korean play, and some of the other high elo Korean players are also doing this as well. What's interesting about this is that they are going Ghost. Now Ghost is severely underrated on people who want to stick to other targets in teamfights, who don't necessarily have that natural ability to stick to players outside of, say, bush control. So unless you've got a Senna or an Ivern, sometimes in an open field, non-bush fight, it can be difficult as a tank to stick to targets and target swap appropriately, and for Rengar, Ghost fixes that. It also means that when you have Chem Tank active, which is basically a bruiser item now 100%, that's why you're seeing a lot of bruisery players kind of use it, such as Shyvana as well, you can get into the fight with your ultimate and with that active and basically deal a lot of damage up front just based upon how your numbers and your Bone Tooth scales. And having that Titanic really does help in terms of your clearing with your Barmy Cinder combination, and gives you notable AD scalings in the early game, which you still need to get fed. You're still looking to play very, very similarly. And the important point here is that this play likes to put 3 points into Q and then max W. Obviously, if you're running fighter tank Rengar, you max W second, because he has enough AD scaling to do a lot of damage and still defeat enemy people with his Conqueror. And I do recommend going Tiamat earlier instead of just rushing the Chem Tank. I do know its utility is good, the Barmy Cinder is good, but I think if you're going to snowball as Rengar, the Tiamat into the Barmies and Chem Tank is a better combination, and then of course you can finish Titanic. From here, you all know that he stores 50% of post-mitigation damage he has taken, and basically gives it back to him in gray health. You press the button, you get that battle roar, you get that healing, and you do damage as well. And that's the AP damage and AP ratios worth noting. As such, with this playstyle, as you would have seen SOFM doing in Worlds 2 years ago, it's not really just to kind of flex and be like, look how cool I am. The point is, you have one of the most broken abilities in the game in your empowered W that cleanses all crowd control. This means you can literally use your Chem Tank, use your Ghost, use your ultimate, super engage, still annihilate a squishy with this build. You press your W, heal up, you basically full HP all the time, and now you can chase down people with your Ghost reset, using your bolos and E-bolos as necessary, and still having enough damage because of your Q, Titanic, and Bone Tooth to annihilate squishy targets. You can flex this into a Death Stance if you want to be a bit more fightery, although usually he will go into something like a Randuin's, and then finishes it off with an Anathema's Chain, so he can use it on that target that he wants to kill, and they won't be able to outdamage him while he still is unkillable. This type of Rengar style is radically different than your Assassin. This type of Rengar style is still radically different from your fighter Rengar. It's not something that is going to do full-on damage, but you can still do a lot of it while tanking everything. Pay attention to target swap. You have to understand against heavy CC comps to use your empowered W so you can be free, force them to burn it on you, and now your whole team is basically fighting a CCLS team. You can chase them down with Ebolas, empowered savageries, and embarrassment that they lost to a tank Rengar. It's definitely different, but it's fun, and I recommend you all give it a try. That was our headline, and I will shout out the Volibear build. Please make sure you're using the same exact build on Volibear if you don't want to go Trinity Force or Divine Sunderer. It really is Turbo Giga strong. And what I want you to do is pay attention to all the builds as we go through them. Look at the 2 to 3 item spike in terms of cost. Go into the itemization in your client, add it all up, see how affordable it is and how much utility it provides to you should you decide to play a more low econ style of jungling. And if you're playing a high econ style of jungling and still going these items, well, it leads you to your 4th, 5th, and 6th even sooner, which means your mythic passive is even more enhanced. And for things like Turbo Chem Tank, that's highly valuable because you keep getting haste and you keep getting health. And now second, we want to jump into Graves. Now you're probably thinking at this point, well, Graves can build lethality, he can build crit, he can build Bruiser, Gore Drinker, Stridebreaker. But what if I told you, yes, you can also build Trinity Force? So if you want to go Bruiser Graves and basically be high damage, high sustained DPS and not really die, but you don't really like the Gore Drinker Stride Breaker kind of things, then you can simply go Trinity Force, Black Cleaver, and more of Mortius. Finish that off with perhaps a Death's Dance, a GA, and some such things, and you will be an unkillable AD stacking monster. Yes, I would love to give you more than the Inspiration secondary tree, but apparently people love it, and they will never stop using it, even if Resolve can be better in a lot of cases. The point more so in this particular situation is you have plus 30% attack speed, and as you all know, you need that for your mobility on your E. This allows you to get and keep your True Grip passive as well as use your mobility against, more mobile team compositions. In addition to that, you also not only have the movement speed passive from the Black Cleaver that you will get, with this mythic choice, you also get 20 bonus movement speed for 3 seconds. This is why I like it in Volibear as well. So when I can be kited a lot, and yes, Graves isn't necessarily kited a lot, but against certain team compositions where he's really outranged, it can provide a lot of utility. But that's just really only the tip of the iceberg, because the biggest thing is if you attack a target or a structure, and of course most of you will know the tower hitting video I put out last week, your base attack damage is increased by 4% for that same movement speed duration, 3 seconds. But that also then gets stacked up 5 times for a maximum 20% increase. So what does that mean? It means you're getting more AD the longer a fight goes on, the more you stack it. So while you might use your Q up front and not get that bonus attack speed, you definitely will have it on the second proc, and you for sure will have it on your ultimate. It is a beautiful AD steroid that you can use to take over fights and games against squishier targets where you might not want to Gore Drinker Stride Breaker, and you don't necessarily want that sustained healing, you just want more damage. You also don't want to die against high damage team compositions. And with champions like this, you do enough damage with the Trinity Force passive and in your kit that you scale with the AD ratios on your items very, very well, so the HP and the survivability and the utility and the haste, all of these provide good things for you. And of course, when you imagine a Trinity Force Mortius, Black Cleaver, Death's Dance build, and then you add in the 3 bonus attack damage, 3 ability haste, and 3 bonus movement speed, it's not huge, but it provides a hell of a lot of good stats that Graves loves. Now this next one may seem the most troll out of all of them, and then you're basically gonna flame me for, but let's look at it for a second. Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver, Frozen Heart, Ghost, Kha'Zix. Again, Ghost has more utility for stickiness and basically moving around fights when you don't have inherent map scaling than people give it credit for. And now you're basically flaming me, oh, look at the rune set, look at this, you're just trolling. No, this is a Gurren's build. Literally, this is a Gurren's build. He will sometimes flex an Eclipse instead of Gore Drinker, and he will sometimes throw in a Serpent's Fang if it's necessary, but essentially he loves his fighter pseudo-tank Bruiser Kha'Zix. You cannot die, your Giga Turbo Squishy, your AD Isolation Scalings and Evolve Pass are absolutely nutty. So why not slap through that R-Evolve first and use the Ghost along with your Unseen Passive Turret resets to stick to targets to move around fights with unseen mobility, literally, all while having enough AD damage threat to basically destroy anyone, to survive through fights by being an annoyance. Basically, you are a gigantic, huge swarm of locusts. That's what you're looking to be with this build. Think about a locust, embody it, roleplay it, and become it. The Frozen Heart and the Black Cleaver along with Gore Drinker, what do they all have in common that you love? Ability Haste. Huge for their passive, obviously with armor and mana and being able to sustain that damage and use the Warden's Mail passive, yada yada. That's great with all the HP you have, but the ability haste is really great as well. And honestly, with a lot of multiple AD comps that you might see in solo queue, you might see a lot of Lilias and Shyvanas, being able to stick to them with Ghost and these Black Cleaver passives. I don't know about you, if I do enough damage that I don't really need more, might as well amp other parts of my kit and try them out. Is it better than your typical Flash Assassin Kha'Zix? Obviously not objectively, but could it be a playstyle that you love and find success with? 100%. Now next up we have Jarvan, and you're probably thinking, what the hell can Jarvan build that has never been seen before? Well, it's not so much about that, it's more about what if we combine a lot of the things that Jarvan's known for and basically make a Giga team fighting Jarvan? Hey, I'm glad you asked, because we have Turbo Chem Tank, Zhonya's, Frozen Heart, Jarvan. Can you still go Conqueror? Yes. Can you go things like Glacial Augment for Giga CC Troll? Sure. But First Strike is what this player uses the most often. Obviously First Strike with your perfect timing, Futures Market, Cosmic Insight. The page is absolutely clinically broken, but hey, we don't have to go Inspiration Secondary because it's first. Look at that. Look at that, Virkayu. We got him, right? Yeah? No. At the very least, do Triumph and Tenacity. Make sure you are getting in and out of fights as much as possible, but what Zhonya's does with your AP scalings that you have on your E is not only will you do more damage, you get a huge amount of armor from the Zhonya's, and of course, once you dunk people in your Cataclysm of Dinosaur death, you just get to survive and wait in stasis while your team cleans them up and basically force them to do nothing for that whole duration, almost. The point is, if they're stuck in there with you and they can't escape it, usually they would spend their time killing you. Now they cannot because you're in stasis. You also have Turbo Chem Tank, so the damage you do up front with your E, provided you hit it, is really, really big. And now you throw in the Frozen Heart, which is not only affordable, gives you huge amount of haste, which is of course the thematic of this video, I guess. You enhance your team's attack speed while removing the enemy's attack speed with that Frozen Heart. Obviously the Rock Solid passive, as I've mentioned, plus the armor, plus the mana, really a beautiful item that suits someone who wants to go in and sit around. So now you can farm reasonably quick because of the Balmy Cinder, you can engage at whatever angle even though you're predictable with the Turbo Chem Tank, and now you have Stasis and Frozen Heart to keep you alive for as long as possible in your Cataclysm, and of course if your team's trapped in with you, maybe think about releasing them, but if you're simply dunking the right target and they cannot leave, you won't die, your team will clean up, and you are the dominant fighter disruptor that you've always wanted to be. And because you have First Strike and you're going Futures Market, those items will be very, very affordable to you considering you already have Stopwatch as well, and Frozen Heart is really affordable. As I would have said earlier in this video, as well as on the Monkey video on my gameplay channel, the 2 to 3 item spikes for junglers are absolutely huge. We do not play as high econ as a lot of other roles in terms of how fed you can get, and if you are a ganking jungler who does not focus on farming and really averaging 8 CS PM plus ganks plus ratio, then getting to good spikes sooner, making them affordable, is really a good way to satisfy your own personal win conditions while also allowing you the stress of not worrying too much about a gold income when you play a more supportive style of jungling. Right, and on the final note of getting health and of course getting haste, but instead of haste, let's slap in some tenacity. Diana loves to go in, and Diana is something that can really do a lot of damage and really over damages most people. 2v1s, 3v2s, 1v2, she can do whatever she wants. But what about simply farming, scaling, and becoming unkillable? And that's where the Sunfire, Nash's Tooth, and Demonic's Embrace build comes through. A lot of you would have seen this in the past, a lot of you have seen the Frostfire variations. It's not something that's really new, but it's something that can really absolutely dominate in the low to mid elos and of course in high elo, as all the footage, all the builds on this are taken from high elo. Now the thing about Diana is she loves AP, she loves attack speed, she loves haste. So we don't really want to go full on into the tank just yet. You want to do your Nash's Tooth first, much like Rengar, I recommend the Tiamat first, allow you to use your meta-ness, your damage, your ability to snowball games by using a damage item. This is usually more than enough for whatever you need to do in the early game and get dragons and hit some towers. Obviously tower damage is a component that we really want to focus on these days. And after we 4-cleared and got on a dragon and got on a herald and bonked a few tower plates, now you go into your Sunfire, your farming gets even faster, you have more time between uptime from your camps so that you can full sequence and go do stuff more frequently. You have tenacity and HP growth from that premium tank itemization mythic choice, and then you follow that up with a Demonic's Embrace, and now you're doing percentage damage, have a shit ton of HP, have a shit ton of AP, and you're unkillable, and you can bonk towers, and you can still backline dive, and you can full on engage, not die, use your shield component, and while I do understand the magical footwear and cosmic insight, you could look into some resolve paths if you decided to be even more tankier using that particular component of Revitalize if you've got a Yuumi or something that heals in your team as well. And hey, Yasuo was just buffed, so what you can do is engage for him, survive, and let him clean up. And that's what's interesting about this video. There's a lot of high damage champions that don't need more damage, but then can by tank itemization survive and thrive. You do have to play teamfights differently. You do have to engage differently and understand how to engage. That is one of the more difficult aspects of League. I had a Janna one-trick on my team the other day. She went on Alistar because we had a Yasuo, and we're like, just play Janna, man. And then basically we had a cow in a swimming pool the whole game. 1v5, well, we watched and said, that's not a good engage. So this Diana build is much like the Kha'Zix build and the Rengar build and the Graves build and the Jarvan build. They do accentuate different strengths of the champion, and it's always fun to look at strong champions and how we can maximize them in different ways. So hopefully you enjoyed looking at this. Best of luck trying it. But if you do want to understand how to play the game mentally, make sure you are getting the best edge you can. Click the image in the top right. But if you want to understand exactly how to maximize this one most important thing for jungling, click the link in the bottom left. Really, it's a secret tip. It's huge.